Out of all the panels that you're going to hear from today, I think this will be, in my opinion, the most impactful panel. This will give you the whys of why you're here today, why it's so important, and why this is such a growing and major issue. And you're going to hear different views and just different opinions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by introducing our guests, our panelists, who are all some of the top-notch people in this world, in this industry that you can hear from. And so when I introduce you, if you could just say, quick thing about you, why you're here, and then we'll kind of start the panel after that. Jeff?
No, just quickly, I've been a deputy for 32 years. My whole career has been investigations, and for the last 12 years overseeing the counterfeit and piracy team. All the cases that we've gone through, the collaborative partners, the different kind of cases, our partnerships with Homeland Security. I think the biggest thing I can say revolving around this cases is law enforcement resources are scarce. So the more partnerships that we build, not only with private businesses, with our partners next door, that's the key to success.
And the amazing Tara, can you give us your little intro?
I'm Tara Steckety, and I have been working on investigations internally at Merck into counterfeit medicine for almost 11 years, and then worked with a consulting firm with a lot of different brands doing the same thing previous to that. We're very dedicated at Merck to doing the best that we can proactively to identify large-scale criminal organizations that are distributing and manufacturing counterfeit medicines, so that we can make sure that we build really strong cases, so that when we do refer them to law enforcement, which we know have very low resources, they're really strong cases and they can be prosecuted effectively.
Thank you. And Libby?
Hi, I'm Libby Bainey. I'm a partner at a law firm in Washington, D.C., but more importantly, I represent the Alliance for Safe Online Pharmacies Foundation and also support the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy, two of the campaign partners for the Bad Meds campaign. And as representing those nonprofits, I'll give you some statistics, but more importantly, some personal stories that I've experienced in my own life and those that I've worked with in the community, in the pharmacy community, and the patient community for the last 15 years, trying to steer people to safe sources of medicine, both online and offline. And I appreciate the chance to be with you and hopefully help people protect their lives and the lives of their loved ones.
Thanks. Can we play the video, please?
Don't worry. It's fake. That's a fake bomb. That's good. Fake glass.
Oh, I'll do it. I swear on my mother's grave.
Fake threat. Fake dead guy. Fakes like those don't scare me. But fake meds, that's a different story. Verify your meds with Safe.Pharmacy. Protect those you love from bad meds. And fakes, they're everywhere.
Fake Hollywood actor.
So really quick, the Sheriff's Department spearheaded that along with Danny Trejo, along with Tara and Libby, and the National Associations of Boards of Pharmacies. I think the sheriff gave the stats, but we've reached millions of people, which is amazing. Who knows if any lives have been saved? I like to think that maybe some have. It's currently also being played into 100 million homes throughout the U.S. as part of this campaign. The next person I want to introduce is Sam Chapman. He'll give a quick little intro of himself, and then we'll play a video.
My name is Sam Chapman. I am Sammy Chapman's father, who is forever 16, thanks to a counterfeit med that he took 2 years ago, and we found him dead on the floor in his bedroom.
Thanks. Can we play the next video, please?
Our son Sammy was an amazing kid. Sweet, funny, curious, an A student. And like all parents, we worked hard to keep him away from dangerous people and places. But like most parents, we had no idea that drug dealers were preying on our children on Snapchat and other social media platforms. And we had no idea illegal, untested drugs could be delivered to our house as easily as a pizza. On February 7th, 2021, an online drug dealer reached out to Sammy on Snapchat and delivered drugs to him at our home. He snuck out after we were asleep to meet the dealer, who gave him what turned out to be a lethal dose of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, twice as addictive as heroin, 100 times more powerful than morphine, and fatal even in microscopic doses. And Sammy had no idea he was taking it. As a result, we experienced every parent's worst pain. We lost our son. And even more painful is that our family is not alone in this tragedy. Children like our son, who think they're just harmlessly experimenting, are dying by the thousands across the country from fentanyl poisoning. For most kids today, life online is just life. 95% of today's teens say that they have access to a smartphone. Nearly half of them say they're online almost constantly. The digital world is a 24-hour playground where kids can meet and make friends and learn. It's a dynamic and exciting place for them, but it's also a dangerous one. As parents, we must be more vigilant than ever. We must talk to our children specifically about the new deadly drugs now on the street and offered online. And these drugs are never safe because you have no idea what's in them. We must make sure we know where our kids are online and who's there with them. And to do that, you can use the settings on their social media apps to keep track of their activities. And if you bought their devices, you have a right to all their passwords, whether they like it or not. Using that power could save their lives.
Some social media platforms allow software, such as Bark, to alert parents if dangerous topics appear on their child's social media accounts. Other platforms inexplicably do not, and that is putting our kids at greater risk.
We may have lost Sammy, but we haven't lost our fire to protect kids against these dangers. Please join me. Sign our petition to allow parental monitoring tools on every popular social media platform. Please visit parentsforsaferchildren.org for crucial resources to keep your children safe and learn how we can protect all our children from the drug dealers preying on them online.
Pretty impactful, right? So just play with me. Please stand up if you have children. Stand up if you have children, please. Okay. Imagine if you had to sit in Sam's chair. You guys can truly make a difference today. Now, if you've been affected or a family member has been affected by cancer, stand up. Just as many people, right? So we're not here just to talk about fentanyl. Go ahead and sit down, thank you. We're also here to talk about counterfeit cancer medications and all sorts of life-saving drugs. These guys are preying on patients and people just strictly for financial gain. Quite often, these pharmaceuticals don't have any active pharmaceutical ingredient. Tara, can you hit on some of the things that you guys are seeing? What types of things are out there?
Merck makes immuno-oncology medicine, we make vaccines, we make a lot of life-saving drugs. And counterfeits of those medicines rarely will contain any kind of active pharmaceutical ingredient. Because when you're making a counterfeit of a life-saving drug, it's not always apparent that the patient that is taking that medicine isn't getting the medicine that they need, because there's not always an immediate result or impact or change in feeling, et cetera, for those patients or those consumers. In the past, we have identified sometimes, in an injectable, it will be nothing more than dirty tap water. We've had injectables that when our forensic lab test them, injectables that are supposed to be corticosteroids, injections that you would get if you have pain, in your shoulder or your knee, that contain bone cement. We've had injectables, immuno-oncology injectables, that instead of the active ingredient will either contain tap water, dirty tap water, or something like the active ingredient for Prilosec. Probably because the counterfeiters had that on hand and they wanted to make the product look as similar as possible to the authentic.
Yeah, and I think the whole thing, and we're going to turn it to Sam for a sec, is really changing the narrative. It drives me nuts, and I used to do this when I first met, if you guys were here last year, you met Matt Capoletto. And I would always say fentanyl overdose, fentanyl overdose. It's not an overdose, guys. It's a poisoning, right? So we do need to change that narrative, right, Sam? I want to turn it over to you, Sam.
That's right. This is murder. And it's very important when you arrive on a crime scene where someone has overdosed that you treat it like a poisoning until further notice, because so many of our youth and adults are dying from fentanyl poisoning, and now xylazine as well. That's been found in 3/4 of the fentanyl that they've seized, which is a horse tranquilizer and also necrotic. So people are showing up in emergency rooms and having amputations if they're lucky enough to survive. So that's our situation.
Yeah, it's a scary situation. Captain?
No, I mean, sitting here today, I remember the first time we did this last year with Matt Capoletto, and we were sitting there and we had the billboard behind us, and his daughter was on there, and our campaign started out with, fake pills kill real people. And I asked him, because I just met him, and I said, how can you do this? Like, how is a father who lost his daughter sit here? And he looked at his daughter and he said, I'm doing it so your son's not up there. And as a cop for 30 years of chasing the bad guy and doing those things, it kind of put things in perspective. Since that time, I've spent a lot of time with Matt, and now he's a friend. And what he tells me is the reason that these parents do that or do this is for you. Mm-hmm. They could go to an island and forget the world exists, but they don't want one of your kids to be up there. And Matt talks about his adoration for law enforcement. And he said, I will come every single time. Right now, he's in Sacramento with a state senator trying to change the law. They're trying to do it today. And they're actually getting pushback from the, are you going to talk, you're going to get into it, but pushback from the Public Safety Committee about how fentanyl is really that dangerous or not. And so they're trying to change the law. But what I've learned about him, I have 5 sons, and I can't even imagine losing one, is his true adoration of you and saying, Jeff, please get through to them. Make sure they know that this isn't a lower class, middle class, upper class. This is hitting billionaires, millionaires, homeless people. Races, creeds, religions, it's irrelevant. It's one pill. Matt's daughter took half of a Xanax. She was dead in 30 seconds. It'll suffocate. So check your, and I told this story before, but talk to your kids about it. I showed, if you haven't seen Dead on Arrival is an impactful, it's the best video I've ever seen. It's 20 minutes. Maybe we can send it out later on the link for everybody that registered. Yep. But then the second part to piggyback is we're not just talking about that. Imagine you have a parent who has terminal cancer, and then they're going to get drugs for the last 6 months of their life, and you found out it was dirty tap water. There's someone here that had that case, and it was a 2-year investigation. 2 years, Kwame?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the perfect crime, right? If I lost my mom to cancer, I lost my sister to cancer. So what happens when somebody has cancer and they pass away? Is there an autopsy?
No.
No, perfect crime.
Fake cancer meds were given to that person and hundreds of people every single year. No one ever checks because they die and the doctor signs a death certificate. I never knew this existed. Yeah. It's happening every single day all over the country. And then we found out 95% of all the online pharmacies are BS. It's a new world. I mean, how many people do we lose in 9/11? 3,200? We lose 100,000 a year, and yet nothing's changed.
300 people a day die from fentanyl poisoning, like a jumbo jet dropping from the sky every day. Imagine what we'd do if that was really happening.
Libby, can you kind of hit, like, we're talking about primarily this stuff, a lot of this is online. We're going to have a presentation later today that will talk about, you know, the effects of illicit pharmaceuticals on the Hispanic community, on the ground, being sold, but the problem's really online, right?
Yeah, I mean, how many of you have bought a product on the internet today?
Oh, not today. I was
Or
busy
this
today
week,
setting up.
Or this week.
Yesterday.
Or this year. Everybody buys online. And when I first started doing this work about 15 years ago, it was sort of a novelty. People were really more concerned about what we're talking about right now, sort of the opioid abuse and drug-seeking behavior on the internet. Now it's everything. And we didn't have social media, 15 years ago. And so we weren't worried about our children. It was really people searching on the internet for buy oxycodone, no prescription. You can still do that. Just last week, I was on a call with the White House. I do a lot of work in our Washington office of the nonprofit, trying to change the federal laws and some international laws to create an opportunity for you all to do your jobs, right? To stop the drugs where they are in your communities. And just having talked to some of you, thank you for doing that. But we have to, it takes all of us to do that work, from stopping people on the street here in California, at the national level, international level, because the internet is a global problem. And so we can stop it in our homes, and we can educate, and we have to do that. But we're not going to enforce our way out of the problem. We have to educate our way out of the problem. We have to enforce our way out of the problem. We have to do lobbying and legislative work like you're doing and I'm doing to try to help each other combat this threat, because the internet is here forever. And so the problem that I've seen over the last 15 years has really morphed from that drug-seeking behavior to murder and death by poisoning in pills that were supposed to cure, and now they're causing death. And I mean, I can't sit here and hear these stories. I do this every time I have a 9-year-old and I go home and I talk to him about, you just can't trust the internet, buddy. You just can't, because people will buy when you have lose access to something. And we're talking about this at the national level. Anytime there's a loss of access, for any reason, cost, convenience, access to care, the internet is the outlet valve. We all have bought something on the internet. We all know how easy it is to do it. I'm not here to say the internet is bad. I'm here to say drug dealers and counterfeiters are bad. And they're using that technology to take advantage of us and peddling poison for profit at our patients' expense and our kids' expense. And so what we have to really think about is how to stop that internet supply chain of drugs by your work on the ground, and hopefully our work at the higher levels in government, to create a policy environment that allows for us to protect our kids.
And we're pushing for Sammy's Law, which would require platforms with minors on it to allow for parent monitoring software integration. Yes. And it's just introduced into the California Senate, SB 485, and also by Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Congress. And Matt Capilouto, who Jeff was talking about, is up there pushing for Alexander's Law, which would require a Watson admonition, or what we call Alexander warning, for anybody who was caught dealing, which is like what they read to a drunk driver, letting them know that this is a risk to human life. So if they do it a second time, you can prove state of mind and convict them of murder. So Alexander's Law is important. Sammy's Law is important. Parents like us form together into a group. We're pushing for laws. We're pushing for education. Yeah. We're a group of accidental activists. And to be honest, it's us and the people in this room that are the last line of defense. They found the person who poisoned my son, and the district attorney decided not to prosecute. And no one spoke to us about it. I am absolutely shattered, and the victims' families are not a factor in LA County for some reason in the middle of a crisis like this.
So Sam, I'll try not to lose it, because every time I present with Matt, I cry and I lose it, right? Did you choose this? Did you want to become an expert in this field?
No, I mean, I never thought I'd do anything like this. I'm a venture capitalist and a real estate investor, and I have stopped doing that. I mean, when you're called, you're called. And it seemed clear to me that the world, including us, didn't know what was happening. And so we and the other parents have gotten out there. And what you all do is the last thing a criminal is going to see, because he's going to be let out the same day. So the more you can scare the crap out of them, the more you can let them know that you're breathing down their neck, that's the best we're going to get in LA County until things change. I don't know how this became a right versus left issue. This should be the bipartisan issue of our time, but still we're stuck in this law enforcement. Pro-law enforcement is a right-wing issue, and the left wing doesn't support it. And here we are in Los Angeles, and people are dying. It's time to bring this front and center and take politics out of it.
It's about saving lives, right?
That's right, and I'd give anything to have my son's life back.
You're going to make me cry. Captain?
Can you tell them what your life was the day before versus
Where my
the-
life was?
No, how was it the day? I always, I talk to people when they sit, and I was in New York, I said, how was briefing the morning of 9/11, like for the cops? How was your life the day before you lost your?
Well, it was the day of. It was Saturday. It was a Sunday. It was Super Bowl Sunday. I made him a cheeseburger. I brought it up to him, told him I loved him, and then an hour later, my young son screams, "Something's wrong with Sammy." We come rushing in, find him on the ground, vomit coming out of his mouth, and what I call the fentanyl death pose. What happens is they stop breathing, and then they aspirate what's in their lungs, and then that chokes them. So they're either going to die from a lack of respiration or from choking. So the cheeseburger that I fed my son could have been what did it. And it's just the worst thing that can ever happen to someone. I've been dealing with PTSD for the last 2 years from trying to resuscitate that boy and failing. And I didn't know about Narcan. Tomorrow, the FDA is scheduled to announce Narcan is going over the counter, which means that anybody can go in without being embarrassed and buy what they need. It's quick, it's easy, it's in each nostril, just like that, near the brain. 2 grams of naloxone 2 milligrams of naloxone go into the system near the brain. I also have Zimhai, and I'm going to put a couple boxes of this in the back on the right. Zimhai is 5 milligrams of naloxone and is excellent for the first responder community. You just jab it into the thigh like an EpiPen, and it delivers more naloxone than Narcan does. So I think first responders really want this one. And this is great for the home, this is great for your car, this is great for your cruiser or your ambulance, or even at the office there. So I'll put a couple boxes of this in the back. These are actual samples that can be used. And if you want more, just reach out to the company.
Chris, can I add, I think it's important to think about the source of your medicine. We're talking about drug dealers coming into homes. This is where your work is so important, is trying to stop that street behavior before it gets to your doorstep. And you also have sort of the massive, and I think about this a lot, but the internet supply chain of that. And how do we effectively educate people so that you have a message to tell people when you're stopping the drug deal, or when you're putting people that are doing this type of behavior and selling counterfeit drugs, crossing the border, coming back, selling drugs on the streets here, what can you tell people about how to buy safely? Because part of this problem is just an access to medicines issue. I need to have some version of care, and I don't know where to go. And so I've heard some of you talk about they may drive over the border, people look on the internet, they're trying to find something that they otherwise believe they need. And this is true for all therapeutic products. I mean, my sister was a victim of counterfeit medicines. She survived, but it was an allergy medicine that she just didn't have access to. It was expensive. Her doctor at the time said, got it from a Canada drug dealer. It's going to be easier and cheaper to get from a Canadian pharmacy. She was a grad student. My mother's a nurse. I mean, this is an educated family, and yet she thought, well, that's easy. It's cheaper and safer to buy it from a Canadian online pharmacy. I'll just do that because my doctor told me to, because no one told me it wasn't safe, because it looks real on the internet, and people just don't know. And so I come back to how can we verify before we buy, and the importance of this campaign is to steer people to safe sources of medicine, verify the source of your medicine before you buy. The supply chain of medicine is really important. The safety is in the supply chain. And so talking about to our families and our loved ones, please verify your source of your medicine before you buy so you can prevent that bad thing from being at your doorstep or in my case, my sister's hands. And so I just hope we can remind ourselves of some of the easy things we can do is verifying the source of medicine before we buy it.
Tara, how many of those websites are actually located in Canada?
Some of them will operate in Canada, but the product that patients are receiving when they order from a Canadian online pharmacy is very rarely product that is intended for the market in Canada. At best, a patient that purchases from, one of those illicit Canadian online pharmacies is getting product that is authentic, but it's intended for another country. We have no idea how the product is stored, whether or not it's safe. Patients will also receive unapproved generics that have not been evaluated by any regulatory authority, either here or in another country. A lot of that product is manufactured and shipped from India. And at worst, a patient will receive counterfeit medicine that they believe is, being shipped from, from Canada or from, in some cases, the United Kingdom. And patients are receiving complete counterfeit with no active ingredient. We've had, issues within the past 10 years where cancer patients and physicians were purchasing from a Canadian online pharmacy and receiving product, chemotherapy product that was completely counterfeit.
Yeah, it's truly scary. Fortunately, I think that the U.S. pharmaceutical supply chain is fairly strong, right? Like, if you go to a pharmacy, you're usually pretty good here. But that's not the case in Mexico. It's not the case in El Salvador. A lot of other countries where these counterfeit life-saving drugs have actually infiltrated their legitimate supply chains there in those countries, which is just hugely scary. Captain?
I'm just sitting here thinking, I never thought in my career that I'd be talking about this. And that's why we're so honored to have the people that are here, because this is the next generation. I mean, if we're losing this many people, and you have a doctor telling a patient to go online to get medication that's counterfeit, what the hell do you do next?
Yeah.
So one of the things here in law enforcement, what's our job, right, is for community safety and community engagement. And so looking at building these cases, one is having the knowledge that it's going on. And if we're losing the amount of people we are, that means it's surpassing gun violence, it's surpassing every other death. It should be our number one thing. So what you have to have is buy-in from you. Because the people that do the cases, they're the treasure of this whole thing. Law enforcement exists because of the men and women that are doing it every single day. The executives are supposed to be the people that can get things approved and facilitated for them to work. And that's why if there's an organization, because I know we're very blessed with Homeland Security and the relationship that we have, and there's a total buy-in. But if you work in an organization where chief of police or even a sheriff isn't supportive, let us come do a presentation for them and show them, because the work that you're going to do, and some of you are doing it already, wait till it hits your house, because you're going to then turn this engine in a way that you don't want to, but it has to have resources and support from your agency. And so you're the beginning, but there's a big conversation to be had next.
Yeah, and you saw me because when I first watched Matt Capoletto speak, my wife was there at the training. She ran right outside the training and hugged my sons, because we don't want to be sitting in Sam's chair, And I think there's 3 pillars: education, awareness, and enforcement. We need you to get out there and enforce to the best of your ability. The good thing is we're going to do the next panel presentation. We'll do a kind of a case study on how to do these cases. What does good look like? But you don't want to be the unwitting expert. You don't want to have to become an expert in this field without making that choice.
Chris, to that note, and I know they're very humble. Look, I'm a nobody, but I'm sitting next to 2 national experts that flew in from the East Coast, Washington and Philadelphia. And so we have the built-in people, and that's a blessing, Chris, to you. is the network that we've built, and Aaron Graham that's out there. There's people in this room that are the national and international experts in the world, that anyone attending this training, if you're building a case or you need help, they are one cell phone call away. That's the reason we do this. And they're humble, but these are the people. And there's others out there, and you'll see them later on. And that's the cool part of this training, which you have that immediate access. There's no approval. Call Tara, call Libby, and we do it all the time. And so you have that guidance, so you don't need to struggle to figure that out.
Chris, our nation is under attack.
Yeah.
We're under attack from China and from the drug cartels. When I found out that not only was China sending the precursors to Mexico, because under the Trump administration they were threatened with sanctions, so they stopped sending the fentanyl into the United States and started sending it into Mexico. Not only are they sending the precursors there, but they're sending the pill molds. Yeah. It's like a DIY kit for poisoning America. And nothing happens in China without the blessing of the Communist Party. This is an attack on our nation, okay? And they hand it right to the cartels, who are quite happy to attack our border. We're a border state, and you all are the first line of defense. That's the situation. We're in a war, and you're the line of defense.
Anyone else want to add to that?
I want one more thing, because I know there's a lot of people vaping, because I walked through it, some of it outside, which I choose, so it is what it is.
Don't vape.
We had a case where a major vape brand was being constructed in Downey. There was a garage lab where vitamin E acetate and some other chemicals were put into the cartridges. And anyone that smoked that, you would have a film over your lungs that basically adds 30 years to your life. And so and I know because California taxes things different. I chew tobacco, so now I'm going to Arizona. But because we all want to save a buck, that's kind of where some of it starts. We want to have a deal or save some money. And pharmaceuticals, I think access to medication is a human right. And through this programs, and maybe they'll touch on it later, there are programs you can give to your community. We don't want you to do this, but you can call here too, because some people aren't as fortunate as some of us are. And so don't think that it's limited to a certain product. Yeah. I will never vape because I saw the autopsy of the kid in Minnesota who had the vitamin E acetate on his lungs. It's crazy. Yeah. And this stuff was being sold in LA by the hundreds of cartons a day, and it was all counterfeit.
Well, it's the tobacco, it's also the cannabis. I mean, the types of counterfeits. Look, if you guys went around, you got cockroach repellent out there. How many of you knew cockroach repellent was counterfeited, right? Like, these guys are counterfeiting anything and everything to make money. Libby, can you hit on Patients Assistance Program just real quick on that so people know?
Thanks for asking. When you walk out, you'll see a table next to one of these signs. We have a lot of brochures, both in English and Spanish, trying to steer people to safe medicine sources. Prescription drug assistance programs, manufacturers offer them for particular products. You can also go to Needy Meds, GoodRx. There's other ways to save and stay safe. When people are looking for product, they're often, as you said, looking to save a buck. And this has been studied. I mean, you don't need data to prove the obvious, which is, yes, we all are looking to save a buck sometimes. And when you go to the internet, you can find cheaper things. Or if you go to bodegas and flea markets, you can find cheaper products that aren't safe, but you're saving and you don't know better. And the startling thing, and having done this for a decade now, people just don't know that the drug might not be safe. They really don't understand it. Because we are blessed with a very safe supply chain. And you talked about brick and mortar pharmacies. Yes, except we're not trained.
But why is America the greatest country, right? It's our law enforcement. So when people talk about anti-police and all this bullshit, like, you guys are what makes our country great. This is why people immigrate and want to come to this country. You protect us so we can be successful.
That's right. We can have safe medicine.
And I think what factors in is the sophistication of replication.
Oh, God.
We could have medication with the national experts in front looking at it, examining the packaging, the form, the color, the imprints, you name it. They can't tell the difference until it's broken down in the toxicology and all those things. I think the sophistication of replication has significantly improved And that's why it looks real, tastes real, until it kills you.
Well, look, okay, don't lie. How many of you gone to Santiago, you ladies, and bought counterfeit Louis and Gucci down there? Raise your hand. Tell the truth. Right. You're making a conscious choice to buy a knockoff. You're choosing to do that. Are these people
Yeah, they don't
choosing to
know.
get counterfeit cancer meds or a counterfeit pill laced with fentanyl? They're not making that choice.
I
That's
think
the
the interesting
difference.
thing is people believe that they can tell the difference, right? Because you can usually tell the difference in other products, and you just can't tell. You just can't tell. But people still believe it. You study it, people are like, well, I can tell. Pharmacists, our medication experts in this country, have no idea. Less than 5% of Americans know how to buy safely on the internet, including pharmacists, the people that are supposed to know. And so if we can't help, how can they? We have to do better. And so we have to steer them to safe sources, and hopefully you can do your jobs to take them off the street.
I mean, just to add to that, we're a pharmaceutical manufacturer, and for important regulatory reasons, we respond to every single call or email or indication that we get when a patient or a doctor or a pharmacist is wondering whether or not something is authentic. And most of those signals that we get, we call them leads in our shop, are from pharmacists and doctors. And they're reaching out to us to really confirm whether or not, gosh, my patient came in with this medicine and asked me to administer this in the office, and it looks okay, but I'm not sure where the product was obtained. And even for us, if we get a really good photograph, we can assess whether or not, the packaging is, real but really without forensically evaluating that sample, having that sample come to our lab, it's really impossible for us to authenticate.
Yeah, the game has changed. The sophistication, it's a clear effort to deceive the consumer or the patient. And quite often what's freaking nuts, a lot of these counterfeit cancer meds are priced just under what the authentic would be. Yeah. So it's not like, a Louis Vuitton costs $3,000 and you're getting Santiago for $40 where a consumer is going to know. It's a clear effort to deceive.
Yeah, that's right. The red flags are pretty, are just in other products very obvious, right? It's a massively good deal. If something was $5, it's supposed to be $500, it's kind of obvious that people probably wouldn't be buying that. So they do. They just undercut price by a little bit, or say, it's soon to be expiring product. An inventory sale. There's lots of tactics, and you were just talking, Samuel, about some of the emojis that are being used in social media to try to lure people into this behavior as well. So there's all sorts of criminal tactics that you're all seeing that, from the patient side, we're trying to educate around and hopefully create tools to do better at steering people to safe sources of medicine and away from that criminal behavior.
Yeah, and I think as we look at my generation, it was say no to drugs, right?
Right.
And so what was that? The reason to say no to drugs is you're going to get addicted and your life's going to fall apart and it's going to suck. Well, we're way past that now because addiction and all that's irrelevant. You're going to be dead. And so finding a way, and we do that through, in today's society, how do you get this message out? Well, we hope to start with you. The Bad Meds campaign, using Danny Trejo's celebrity, Sammy Chapman. If you're not familiar with this story, you might want to look it up. The influence that they have is any way we can to touch a segment of the society. You look at it, Touch the Angels organization, Tyler Skaggs. Mm-hmm. We need the Major League Sports organizations to join us. We need to get, because if some 16-year-old girl that we met the other day, how many million followers? It was ridiculous. 60 or 60?
How she has 16 million followers on TikTok, I have no idea, but
I don't get it. But either way, if that person can get 16 million children to go, oh, what's this? That's what we need. And so we're going to make this isn't going to stop.
But you know what's crazy? She can get 16 million followers on TikTok because she does these funky dances and dresses funny, right? But when we're trying to get a public service awareness campaign up and running, man, super duper hard, right?
Yeah.
Super hard to get that engagement, those followers. So we need to change the mindset that people need to understand that they need to be educated and make better choices. But the cool thing about that TikToker, thank you very much, Tara, she's joining us in the
Yes.
Stop Bad Meds campaign and going to use her platform to those 16 million people to spread this message, which is amazing because she came to an MMA event, she felt inspired, and now she wants to be a part. That's kind of what we're trying to do with you guys today, the why.
And that's why we're trying to bring in such a diverse, and I'm looking at Natalie from Crime Stoppers. We're looking at every single way that we can to touch the public. As we said earlier, it's a three-prong, education, awareness, and enforcement. If you catch them, put them in jail, no doubt about it. Now, are they going to stay there? We'll get into that discussion later. But the education part, I don't think the education part really worked in the past with drug use. Why? Because nobody was dead 20 seconds after snorting a line of coke, right? They might have had some fun. I never saw that, but and
Well, they're also choosing, to that point, they're also choosing that behavior. I mean, this is
Yeah.
poisoning and murder.
Yeah, they're
Like, the
not
difference is
choosing,
that
yeah.
was a choice, and this is
Right.
not a choice, to your point.
And I think that's where even there's going to be some innovative ideas from you. So as you network, get to know each other, and don't just sit with people you know today. Find the people that you don't know, and seek out some of our partners at Homeland Security and LAPD that are here to develop these relationships. So when you get that, make sure you have these numbers on speed dial. Because I truly think this next 15 years, if we're losing 100,000 people, what are we going to be talking about? Oh, we've lost 1 million now? And so it starts here. These kind of trainings are now going on all throughout the country. I think we're going to be traveling the U.S. here soon. But we thank you for, 1, coming today, 2, listening, and then 3, what are you going to do next? Help us help the community and help you, because it may save your own child.
You may be wondering why they're doing this. Like, what's the point in killing your customer? And the answer is the addictiveness of fentanyl. If they don't kill the customer, they have them for life. It's worse than heroin in that regard. And we actually take some comfort from the fact that our son is not living that life. He's the one who passed away. He's the one who went to sleep on the floor. We're the ones who are suffering.
Yeah, I mean, I always talk with Matt, it's like families are destroyed and devastated. It's not the one life that's lost. You're going to live a lifetime of pain, right? And that's why, doing this training, getting inspired, the whole Bad Meds campaign, I'm all in because, I don't want to be sitting in your chair, and I don't want anybody else to be sitting in your chair. Tara, any closing thoughts on this panel?
No, I mean, I'm honored to be sitting with each of you. Everyone on this stage has been touched by this issue, and everyone on the stage is a subject matter expert. But I hope that the law enforcement community really understands the impact that counterfeit medicine, fentanyl poisoning has to families across the United States. And just know that we are so grateful for anything that you can do to really just help stop this issue.
Captain,
Thank
any
you.
closing remarks?
No, just thank you. Like I said, and I'm pretty honest about it. I never thought I would do this as a cop. It's heroin, coke, meth. Hell, those are nothing now. If you think about that, I would encourage my son, instead of online, do powdered coke.
Unless it contains fentanyl.
Because if his son, right. Well, and we didn't really jump into that too now, is when you're making the kilo of coke and you put in the 2 teaspoons of fentanyl, is it mixed properly? All of a sudden you see, 5 people in a beach community died this weekend of fentanyl poisoning. Well, they got the chunk of the kilo that didn't get mixed in. So it's just a different time. And if I wasn't a father, maybe it'd be different. If I didn't have a big family, but it is what it is. And it breaks our heart to work with people like you, because I'd rather you weren't here.
Yep.
And I don't want one of them to be here. And so this is a gut punch. But we always talk a good game.
That's what we do.
Well, what are we going to do? Are we going to have the same thing next year? Oh, we lost 200,000 now. So what are you going to do? I got a few years left, and so I'm pretty bold. I don't care about promotion. What are you going to do? Are you going to actually take the time to do these cases, Are you going to research it? Are you going to talk with your kids? I talked to my sons, and I'll never forget the conversation we had because I was blown away by what they told me. So please have that, because almost cussed. I got through this without doing it.
I did cuss, so hopefully you're not recording.
It's worth it. I'll dedicate the next years that I have for this, if it means that your son or daughter wakes up in her bed, or his bed, instead of dead, and you're going, what the F just happened? So that's what this is about. And the more you can do it for yourself, and then the community. But this is different. I always say, what they say in briefing at 9/11 that morning, what happened 2 hours later.
Yeah. Libby, any closing remarks?
Just thank you, and please help us save lives. So join the campaign, verify before you buy, and thank you for doing your jobs to protect people.
Yeah. Sam, we're going to leave it to you to leave us the very last closing remarks for this panel.
These remedies can save a life. Good for your cruiser. Speak to your bosses about making the buy, and let's start saving lives out there if we can. Also, Opiant, Santa Monica company, is coming up this June with a remedy that's even stronger for fentanyl. So stay up on the remedies. As you see someone who may have passed out, these are non-toxic, so there's no risk in administering them. So you might as well try and save a life if you can.
Yeah, so even if you're wrong, let's say the person, I don't know, is out for another reason, you cannot hurt them by these remedies.
That's right.
So there's no like, oh, you blew it, you just made it worse. You can't. And so it's important. And I think one of the things that, in doing something like this, a lot of people think I have this huge budget. I have no budget. We had no budget. To get that commercial filmed, and the things, if you look at the signs, and if you've never, has anyone here, well, let's do a show of hands. I want to check something out. How many people here have heard of Up Next Fighting? Oh, look at this. Not many. Look up Next Fighting. I wasn't really into it, but I am now. The gentleman standing at the microphone over there, it's their new venture. It's like I call it the minor leagues of Bellator MMA.
For sure.
Would that be appropriate?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. They've had amazing events here locally with millions of people on pay-per-view, and they've been doing it under the bad meds. And so I would like, why don't we stand up? I'm getting old. I would like to present this award to Tara, because without you and your company's assistance, none of the things that we've been able to do over the past few years, we go to shows and an award. This is the deepest thank you I can give you, because I can tell you that just because of you, one of my deputies saved their sons. And I've saved that. Before we met you and you did these things, I didn't understand. And so this is a small token of our appreciation for starting this with us and taking this journey and adding our partners. So thank you on behalf of the LA County Sheriff's Department.
Okay, we gave you the why, right? So we're going to spend the rest of the day giving you the tools to do this stuff. So we're going to take a half hour product ID training and break, and we'll see you guys back in a half hour. Thank you.